business, and community. I'm Bridger Hopkins. Around here, we're honest about the journey, the progress, the setbacks, and the unexpected turns that teach us something worth passing along. Today, we're sitting down with Jed LaPlant, and we got a good stretch ahead of us. Whether you're starting the work or you're digging in deep, this conversation is for anybody who's looking to build something. So today's guest is someone who knows what it means to build from the ground up, not just with blueprints and framing and concrete, but chords, lyrics, and long nights on the road. Jed LaPlant is the frontman of Wild Horses, a band born in northern Minnesota, but is now carving its own lane through the country. You might know their songs, you might have seen a show, but today we're pulling back the curtain on what it really takes to run a band like a business. Because behind every room is a lot of grit and practice, booking tours, chasing down who's going to pay you, selling some merch. And music is a craft, but you got to hustle too.
Yeah.
Welcome, Jed.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
How are you doing?
Good. I'm it's good to be back in town. Haven't been in town for a couple months, so.
Yeah. So just give us a little bit about what you're doing now, who you are, your Wild Horses.
Yeah. Well, we started this band about 3.5 years ago now, and started that with at that time in our lives we were making the pivot in life to say whatever it was, however it looked, we were going to do music full time, and so it just so happens that I'm sure we'll get into that. Wild Horses was the vehicle to put our energy into, but we're a few and a half years in. Got a record out. We're touring as much as we can, and just in the last few months have gotten a little bit more help behind the scenes with people that know what they're doing in the music business. So we're just recently not doing everything ourselves, but we're all playing shows and really enjoying it.
Cool. So Jed, how did you get into music?
I pretty much grew up around it, for better or for worse, and in my case, I'm very grateful. I suppose some people may have felt stuck with it, but my family played a lot of bluegrass music and fiddle tunes and a lot of jams going on, and I just kind of grew up in the middle of it. It was never forced on me, but I grew up kind of going to shows and gigs and jams and kind of soaking it in as I went. And at some point, I suppose I picked up an instrument and decided maybe this is fun to join in on. But I was from as early as I can remember. It was kind of just around. So
how did you decide ultimately to go? You're playing music to like, hey, I want to take a run at this. I want to do something with what ended up being Wild Horses.
There's a couple of different ways I could answer that. One angle would be I tried a lot of different other things, and some of those things were good, and some of those things were feeble attempts as far as careers and jobs go. And at some point, I kind of ran out of options in a way. There's a lot more backstory to that. But I think another side of the coin was I would seek out shows of some of my favorite bands. And, I love going into jams, but I love just as much, some of the bigger shows that you pay a ticket to and drive to and festivals and things like that. And I think I wouldn't be honest if I said there was something in me that wanted to see if I could, tackle something like that. And I knew that there was a lot of, road hours involved and a lot of hard work. And I was raised in a way that didn't make me scared, I suppose. But yeah, I think there was a part of me that it's like, I grew up doing music a certain way, and there's a whole nother way to do music, and that's out touring and out playing festivals and shows around the country and around the world. And I thought that it would be cool to try and do that in that way, I suppose.
What do you say was your first real show? Not just as now you're performing all the time. What was your first show, you would say?
That I performed?
Yeah. When did you catch that bug?
Yeah. I mean, I would say I caught the bug. I wouldn't count it as a show, but I caught the bug in the early days, probably at the VFW in Grand Rapids for open mic nights, and that's really when I started writing songs. That's where I started going down to perform and hang out with other songwriters and people. And I think that's where I caught the bug. There wasn't anything formal about that. It was the same people every Thursday. But there was something that just made sense about writing songs and then singing them for, those small handful of people. That just made sense to me. It felt like, so sometimes in life you have these things where you put in a certain amount of work and it yields a certain result.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things in my life that I put a lot of work into and yield a lesser result than maybe when I write songs and try to perform them. And so at some point it made sense. It's like, I think this is part of what I was maybe built to be doing in some way.
Cool. It's a good return on investment on your time.
Exactly. Yeah, that would be that'd be the bridge out ahead term for that.
Yeah. When did you really think that, okay, I'm enjoying this and I'm going to give it a shot, to like, okay, I think this is going to be my job. This is what I'm going to do now. Yeah. So I would imagine there was a little bit of a gap. We're like, oh, I'm going to do this. And like, oh, okay, this can actually happen.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you say this can actually happen because it's still a roll of the dice every time we go out. But, when the transition point was, I'd kind of done gigs on the side and I put out a solo record and kind of treated it as a hobby while I was working other jobs. And then there was a time in my life when I was laying on a couch because I had a broken back, and I was staring in the face of a 30-year mortgage, and was out of work, and it was kind of a natural thinking point among other things. And I was fresh married at the time to my wife Ariana, and it was kind of a natural fork in the road, and we just kind of sat down at that time. It was like, okay, what we were shooting for isn't going to work anymore, and what is the thing that if we looked back in 5 to 10 years we would regret not doing? And we both decided that in whatever form it was, we would regret not going out and playing gigs and doing that as a living, because it's like anything else. I think if you can do it halfway and you can enjoy it as a hobby and things, but you can't really do it all out if you don't do it all out. I mean, there's certain rewards and certain things that you can always sit back and wonder, like, what if I would have given it a shot? And so that was the thing. I mean, it was kind of, we were in a pinch, but also it was a nice point to, had I not broken my back and we weren't in that position, maybe we would have just kept it as a hobby, and maybe I was wondered, like, what if I would have done that? And so, we decided that, and we bought a van and we built that out to be able to live in. And we caught wind of the Grand Rapids River Fest, the first go around of that, and asked somebody if we could maybe be involved on an opening slot. And then we played that gig, and that very quickly and easily became it was so obvious that was the thing that we were going to put our energy into as far as pushing and booking shows for. And we haven't looked back since.
Is that when Wild Horses started, or was that even before Wild Horses?
I would say that's when Wild Horses started. Yeah. I mean, we that winter, kind of when some people were locking down during the COVID sort of era of life. I was writing some new music, and we had gotten together with some friends of ours, some locals, JJ Snell, who plays drums, and our friend McKeon Roberts, who ended up playing bass in the band, but knew him through the singer-songwriter sort of network around here too. And we had kind of gotten together with those guys as by way of just getting together, mostly at first, because everybody was kind of isolated. And then when we caught wind of this festival, we started rehearsing towards that. And it's like, let's play a gig, And we played that one gig, and it was there was an overwhelming local support response. I'd say people just kind of like opened their arms to us, for lack of better words, which was really cool. But it also, like, on stage, it was just like, this is really exciting. This is like a different way that I've approached music, and I really want to lean into this more. So we got right to work. We went right into the studio and started trying to book gigs. So that was definitely, it was September 11th in 2021. I would say was the beginning of Wild Horses.
Wow.
So,
so making the decision to actually take the leap, go out and start something and say, hey, we're going to go all in. We're going to go 100%. There's a lot of risk involved with that. Were there times since, fall of 2021 that you've almost given up, or things seemed to like they were about to fall apart?
Yeah, plenty. In fact, we've had some recently. I don't know that I think there's, I knew there was a lot of hard work into this, and I knew there was a lot of rolling the dice and risk. But I would say it's more than I thought, for a lot of ways. If you're going to be a touring band, like try and tour nationally, that's where most of the risk comes. Because I think, we have close friends of ours too that make a great living running a pretty regional circuit. And so they stay mostly in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa. And that's what they like to do. And that's a great way to play music and make a living making music. But we kind of decided that we wanted to try and, do the national touring thing. And that's where the most risk comes in, because, you got a lot of road miles, your vehicle, the stakes are higher for your vehicle. There's just a lot more variables, and it's tougher to get gigs, in Washington when you're from Minnesota rather than in Duluth, So yeah, there's been many points. I remember maybe the most distinct was last spring. So this would have been the spring of 2024. I had worked for about 4 to 5 months on a summer tour. It was about a 3-week long tour, and we were going to go all the way out to Washington and back. And up until this point, that was the biggest effort, as far as a tour we had got into. And for a bunch of different off-the-wall reasons, most of the tour fell apart about a week before I was going to announce the whole thing. And everything from venues closing to promoters getting fired to it wasn't just that we aren't interested anymore. It was weird reasons. And so we had 3 gigs left, and it was are we going to do this or maybe we shouldn't? And we've always held the attitude. It's if we put our word down into something and we have an open door, it's we're going to pursue that, if at all costs, essentially. And so, so I spent, several weeks trying to rebuild that tour, and it was just there was nothing coming through. And I remember thinking, up until that point, that happens a lot, but overall, we'd been able to tour and we had a little bit of a growing thing in the region, it seemed like. But this is I just couldn't get anywhere. And that was a point I remember I was at Brewed Awakening's coffee house down the road here, where we do a lot of our business when we need to step away from just looking at a wood stove for hours on end and sending emails. And I remember I was sitting there, and my wife, Ariana, will tell this a little bit more descriptively, but I had slumped down into the booth quite a ways. And it was kind of, the point of at some point you wonder if maybe you should hang it up and get a job. Because at some point, maybe it just isn't working. Maybe we pushed it as far as we could, And I remember sitting there and we got an email, which there's a whole nother story to this email, but we got an email that offered us a few gigs in Wisconsin, opening up for Trampled by Turtles for February of this year. And that was all we needed. It was just a little bit of a push of okay, maybe we aren't done yet, and we, of course, were very excited and said yes to those gigs. And then in a few weeks, we pulled together this 3-week tour and announced it for the summer. And it was a hard burn because the routing got really weird not efficient. But we pulled through. And there's been moments since then where it's man, I wonder if I'm pushing too hard. But I think lately, especially the last few months, we really feel we've pushed through some of those major first barricades to where it's I think we're doing the right thing. I think this is worth continuing to put effort into, essentially.
Yeah, and I don't know if many people know this or many of your fans, but you're kind of known for having vehicle issues.
Yeah, that's happened.
It's happened. You're also kind of a gearhead. How many times have you had to guess on your tours or even your going abouts? How many times have you broken down?
So here's the funny thing. So in the rest of my life, yes, we're always, we're driving, our grocery getters are always I'm driving an old Subaru right now that somebody gave me because the transmission is going out. and that's what we get our groceries with. But I will say, our touring rigs, we've had the white van that we first lived in and toured in, and now we have this coach bus. They have been the most reliable rigs I've ever had. It's not to say they haven't had their moments. We had, at one point the headlights went out on the bus in the middle of the night, all at once. We had the starter got a little funky on me here this last run. The van, I think we threw a thermostat once. We've got some tires and things involved, but overall, we haven't racked up much of a list of them breaking down so far.
That's pretty good for you.
Yeah. Well, for us, it's like that's the all-in thing. Like we really tried to be on the front end of all maintenance and doing once-overs, and in fact, half of the front undercarriage compartment on the bus is all tools. So we try and, it's not to say we haven't broken down, but it's like, I think we're more prepared than, when I used to take trips, by myself, I just hop in and go and, whatever happens.
It's especially on a tour, you're relying heavily on these vehicles to get to where you need to be.
Yeah.
And you have people waiting for you.
Well, that's the thing. It's different. When I'm on a road trip sightseeing, it's like if I break down, big deal, I'll find a way home. But yeah, when it was a wake up call for me when we had, like this last summer, we had 7 people on the bus. And it's like some of those people are trying to get paid from these gigs. We're certainly trying to get paid from these gigs, and we need to get there. And all of a sudden there's a greater responsibility that I have, rather than just, this is fun to go see country and play gigs. It's like there's people that are depending on this besides our reputation. If you give somebody your word and you say you're going to be somewhere, it's like it's important to me to follow through, and that stuff happens. But it is upped my my responsibility in taking care of things on the front end and being prepared to get out there, which I think is a good thing in life anyways. I'm slowly learning that.
Well, and kind of going into the rebuilding or retooling your skill set, it's a different ball game to go run a cross country tour or even touring regionally. It's a different skill set than just going up and playing a few songs, writing a few songs, and especially when you're dealing with a lot of people. So what have you done to build that skill set? And what was really the biggest maybe mindset shift that you had to make?
That's a really good question, because it is a massive shift and something that I didn't receive any training for until I was on the job, but I think, the biggest shift for me was, like I say, in the early days, we had, my wife and I decided to, put this thing full time, but we had, our 2 bandmates were working other jobs, and they were taking time off of work and sacrificing family time to be out there. And so for me, besides the fact that we had goals, and there's a certain way to go about touring, as I sort of loosely learned from other bands that I'd looked up to, that when you go cross country, there's a way in which you want to book gigs, and there's a way you want to go about it that can grow your following rather than just be an annual road trip every year to play music, Mm-hmm. And so a lot of it was gleaning from and learning from some of those bands that we looked up to in some of those contexts that were really generous to help us, give us some insight into certain venues in certain towns and certain ways to word an email that present us as the kind of band we want to be, rather than, hey, my name's Jed, I play songs, I put out a record, can we play a gig? I definitely learned a lot from people in this community too. As far as just tried up front to start all the language and things surrounding what we did to present as a different thing than just a local gigger and a songwriter. It was like we definitely not necessarily fake it till you make it, but in a way you kind of build up, the language towards we're a band, we tour, we have this record out, we'd like to make a stop in your town kind of thing. And we learned a lot too. We played some places that, were less recommended, and we learned why. And we've played some things that, pay wise or otherwise just didn't make sense. And then all of a sudden, there's the right person sitting there, and mm-hmm. it yields a better return down the road. And so, yeah, we've learned a lot, but it's I would say the mindset shift came from observing and learning from other bands and other people in the music business that have very graciously offered advice because we were blind going into it.
Well, and you mentioned the, fake it till you make it. To a degree, it's like, okay, I'm going to look at these other people who are doing this, and I'm going to try to act like them, and see what comes of that. Sometimes it's what comes first, but really seeing and acting in that way can really make a difference too.
Yeah. It can, even things like, in my head, touring bands had large, heavy flight road cases, right? And we're used to like walking in with, your average guitar case. And so like early on, we started scouring Facebook for road cases, find deals on them, and spray painted our logo on them because that's what a touring band does versus, a local, if you're playing down at the local pub, you don't need all that heavy. I mean, besides the fact that it's heavy and annoying and takes a lot more cargo, but it's like when we roll up to a venue and you roll those out, there's a perception change of people are like, okay, this is that kind of a band. And again, there's no wrong way to do it. I want to definitely emphasize that. But for us, that was our goal,
Yep.
So
yeah, you're not throwing this stuff in the back of the Subaru, running around.
Yeah.
Another thing, some of it you have to learn the hard way. What would you say are some of the biggest lessons you learned that way?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Some of the things we learned the hard way, I think, the first couple of years especially, there was some momentum and some just a lot of support and excitement around Wild Horses launching, and I think even regionally, if you go out and you book a tour and you play shows out of your state, it's naturally going to give some sort of wow factor. Even if you go out and play breweries or whatever, like it's, there's some degree of that. And I get it because I've watched other bands and that's the perception in my mind. But along with that, I think it come the expectation that, wow, these guys are going out and touring. Wow, these guys have gotten on some really good support bills, opened up for some really big artists. There must be a lot of success and money making going on, especially if they're driving this big bus, around the country and all that stuff. And I think up front, I think we knew there was a lot of smoke and mirrors, but I think the hardest lesson was, doing music in this style, you may, for 5, 10, 20 years, you may work way harder than anything else that you've done in your life, and you may be struggling to make $1. I mean, really, sometimes struggling to make it to the next gig. And I think, when the rubber meets the road on that, it's like when you get out and you're week 2.5 and it's hot, and you've played a gig every single day for 2.5 weeks, and some days you've driven 11, 12 hours between a gig. I think the hard lesson there is that like you have to want that lifestyle so bad for it to be worth it. Otherwise, it's not even close to worth it. Certainly monetarily, certainly whatever else. It's like you kind of have to do it because that's the life you're passionate about living.
Yep.
And so I think, there were some hard lessons, here and there with for us, certainly just realizing that the amount of effort is not going to equal a financial return. And then also, we've had certain friends and people come along the way and say, hey, I'd like to help out with this or that. And then once, you get those hard miles, you realize that maybe it wasn't what they thought either. And there's some growing pains from that. Just realizing that when you actually step foot on the bus, when you play a gig, you play an hour to an hour and a half set, and then there's another 23.5 hours or 22.5, whatever a day is, that
between the next one.
And sometimes you're sleeping, sometimes you find a shower, and otherwise you're driving and looking for whatever food you can find. And so it's like, I think maybe the hardest, the hard lessons have come from just, realizing, and there's no way to learn that until you go out and you try and do it yourself, I think.
It looks cool in the video clips where they clip together the whole tour, like the highlights.
Yeah.
But you edit out the 50 hours of driving.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah, the 50 hours of driving and like, hey, I haven't found a bathroom in 2 days. Where are we going to do that?
Yeah. Well, and one thing it's come up in my life recently too, and I think music is a great example of it. But I've heard it said, you work for 10 years to become an overnight success. I don't know if you've ever heard that. And I think that can really, it says something, you know, it seems like it can come out of nowhere, but really it's, you did the gigs at the breweries, and you did the gigs wherever they would let you play. And then it eventually builds up to, hey, where'd these guys come from?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. All of a sudden. Yeah. No, that's definitely true. And, you know, I've watched bands behind the scenes work. You know, one of my favorite bands I used to watch in the Twin Cities. I first met them. They were busking at a campground, you know, and they worked hard for years. And I used to go to all their city shows. And then, one day they kind of hit it big. And it's like, everybody's like, oh, these guys came out of nowhere. And it's like, I watched these guys for 15 years, you know? And I think, there's a similar story. I told myself for sure for the first 5 years, we're going to give this everything we have. We're going to throw all our money out the window essentially, but in hopefully the right places. And just to, I think after 5 years, we'll either be able to gauge if we're headed in a forward or a backward direction. And maybe even that was short-sighted. You know, maybe I should have said 10 years, but it's a long, hard lifestyle, and you know, even some of the, like, Trampled by Turtles, you know, we look up to those guys a lot, and get to know those guys better and hearing their stories from the early years. It's like they did it the same way, you know. And they put out you know, one record that did well, and that was how a lot of people nationally got their eyes on them. But there was a whole 10 years before that where they loaded up a PA into a Dodge van, and they went to Colorado and they tried to play shows, you know, and they did that many times. So I mean, there's a lot behind the curtain that goes on, and it's all worth it. But it's a real thing.
What are some tools or systems or habits that you've really built up over these last couple of years to keep moving this forward?
I think the one thing I touched on it a little bit earlier, but one thing was coming across as professional as I can be. We've always tried to grow into the opportunities that we're shooting for, if that makes sense. And that comes from everything from wording an email a certain way to putting our logo on our tour rig. But, you know, coming across as maybe a band that's out of our league, because then we can grow into that, even with gear wise. The other thing I think that's helped us out is we've definitely had some really, really gracious people behind us in this community and a little bit broader that have really helped, like I say, offer some advice. But we've really tried to pursue every lead we've gotten, whether it leads directly to a gig or not. But if somebody, you know, reaches out and takes interest, or somebody says, you know, hey, I have this thing out in like our first tour was, hey, I have this brewery in Montana, and I heard from a friend back in Grand Rapids that you guys are a good band. I'd love to pay you guys to come play our brewery. And that's how we started that tour. And I could have said, like, we're in Minnesota. It's a lot of gas money. You know, let me figure this out. But immediately we were like, we'll be there. Let's set a date. And so we've really tried to just follow through and show up, unless, you know, things are not doable. Say somebody needs us to haul a whole PA or something like that. It's just not what we can functionally do. But we've tried to follow up on every lead and every gig, and show up and be as professional as we can. And I think that's the best we can do. But those are the two things that again, musically, you know, I grew up doing it a little different, and I mean, life is just a little bit more relaxed in Grand Rapids, and that's a really good thing. But I think I had to learn how to step up my game as the representation of the band, if you will, the person that's putting my reputation out. I had to step that up.
Well, and you were self-managing for most of your time so far. So you yourself were booking gigs, you were cold calling venues, saying, hey, can we play?
Yeah.
And, you know, so that's a different skill set too.
Big time.
What were some of the biggest roadblocks that you ran into in doing that yourself, would you say?
I would say the biggest roadblock is the hurdle that most bands our size face is getting into certain support opportunities or shows or venues without external representation. So a lot of places we would try to get into really will only respond to like a booking agent or a manager or things like that.
And it adds like a level of credibility, I would imagine.
Yep. Because, I mean, and I get it. Like those people are getting hit up by, probably 100 bands every day that want to play because it's an awesome room or want to open up for this band. And, same thing. I'm sure they're getting hundreds of emails. And so I get that. And I think, the growing pain was, again, if we got referred to some promoter or something, it was, trying to name drop certain people and say like, hey, I was referred by this person to give credibility and kind of give it all we got. But yeah, I mean, for every 100 emails that I would send to a venue or maybe a band to open up for, it's like you get 1 or 2 responses probably. And then you just follow those up. And sometimes that means you're playing, breweries or whatnot on a tour to fill days. But, we tried to prioritize the ones that we felt would give us a good chance at getting on music following ears, in a certain market so that we could maybe come back and try and sell tickets. But that's the biggest hurdle, I think, is and it's, everybody will say it's like, that's what you need to do, but there's no formula. And the only way I think to get on those people's ears is to just show up and do your job well on every opportunity you get, and so that's what we did. And at some point, I could tell you a couple different stories of how we lined up with some of the representation we have now, but that's where it came from. We tried to give it our best shot and worked hard and came across professional, and then, word travels along and all of a sudden somebody's
the right person hears.
Yeah. Yeah. And there you are. And there's no tangible way to say, well, this is what we did to get that person. But now it's like, yeah, super grateful to have those people involved because then it does bring us more credibility and it does open up doors for sure. So.
When you're making those cold calls and unsolicited emails, do you ever get any like soul crushing, heartbreaking like responses?
Yeah, I'm sure we have. I mean,
nothing memorable,
nothing overly malicious, wording wise. I think the soul crushing part comes in, like the example shared earlier, where say like you work on booking a whole tour, and that one we pulled back together. We did a 3-week tour. There's countless other examples where I worked for months on something, and then it comes down to one anchor date, we lose that, and everything else falls apart. And the soul crushing part is not getting responses from places, or it just them getting a better offer and going a different route, and then it's like I just spent months of my life on something that no one will ever know about. We won't be able to go do, and now what, But yeah, overall, I mean, there's been nobody that's been overly nasty, which is nice. They haven't been overly mean. It's just a lot of times you just don't hear back.
Yep, crickets. So you're kind of coming into this new stage for you guys with having some more people on your side, and you're building your team. You have representation. What does that mean for you guys now to have somebody backing you and in your corner? Like what? Now that you don't have to make emails and phone calls, like what's that mean for you?
It means 2 things. Number one, it means that we can make music and play music. That's been the goal all along. We stepped into this, and you have to kind of play all the parts for a while. But that's the biggest thing is we can focus on the thing that we do best. And so we've been working on some new music and getting that out, which is really exciting. But the other thing is it just opens up a massive amount of doors because I think the music business is like any other business in that it's, that everybody says it's who you know, not, what you do or whatever. And so these people are involved in tighter, higher food chain networks. And with them on, representing us, we can, there's just a whole number of opportunities that weren't even possible without representation, even if we had the right email, and so, a big move for us at this point in a band is trying to get on, opening up for other bands and hop on a tour and do that so we can get into some of these bigger rooms, and that is
more eyes, more ears.
Yeah, exactly, and that's almost impossible without a manager and that knows other managers. Yep. Is what I've come to find out. So yeah, that's the biggest difference. But
maybe actually starting out, it's kind of nice you didn't know all that.
Yeah.
Maybe you're like, maybe this email will actually get us in the door.
Well, and like I say, I mean, I could, the backstory to how we found these people was a couple of those emails. I didn't know it at the time, but it led to it. But yeah, maybe. And I think I'm grateful for doing it ourselves the first 3 years too, because I know that the work that goes into it. So I feel like I can appreciate that and honor somebody's effort when I see them working because I know what goes into it. But then also just I think it's good when you have people working for you to know what it takes and what they should be doing. Now that doesn't mean I know how to manage our band better than somebody who's been a successful band manager for a lot more years than we've even been playing music. But that just means like, I have an idea of what's going on rather than like signing a dotted line and saying like, we're excited to work together. And then you have no idea what's going on behind the scenes, or what it takes. So I'm grateful for that too. We're excited. We're super grateful to have be putting our efforts into more efficient places, and to be able to focus on that.
One thing that even when we spoke before, I never really put it together until kind of working on this podcast. Band is a small business or maybe a bigger business, but it's a business.
Yeah.
Because as a consumer, you think of it as art or entertainment, but on the other end, it's a business.
Yep.
And so how do you balance income with the art?
Well, that's a great question. I think if you try to balance income with the art, you're in the wrong business.
Yeah, there you go.
That's what it is. Again, I think it comes down to, you do this for the lifestyle of it. And so when it comes to balancing that out, I think you just put your effort where you get opportunities to be able to do that the most and the best. And then, at some point, there's bands that can make a living touring and buy dental insurance and things like that. And it's like, yeah, that'd be the goal at some point. Right now, that balance looks more like just trying to chase every opportunity we can. And as long as, when we get back to town, we can run to the grocery store and eat for the week off. It's like, that's good. That's good enough. We've oriented our lifestyle in a way that gives us a very low bottom line. Our monthly bills are very low. And there's sacrifices with that too. We came back from this tour in February and our backup heater was off and our pipes froze and we didn't have plumbing for 2.5 months, So there's a give and take with that. I just pumped our well today to have water inside. But so far, whatever that balance is, it's worth it to be able to go out and do that. And I don't know if that's a creative person thing or what, but I think there's a freedom that comes with all that hard work and that lifestyle that is still so worth it above, clocking in at a job every day for a certain amount of hours and living more comfortably, so to speak. But yeah, financially balance wise, I'm not sure where that balance is. It's like,
it's way over there.
Yeah, we're here, we're alive. We have eaten recently and we get to play gigs. So
yeah. Here's something else I want to ask too, because people always think, oh, musicians, if they're playing concerts, they're making tons of money. May or may not be the case. If you're not playing gigs, you're probably not doing a whole lot. But you also have albums and merchandise. How big of a role does that play in your business, especially now that you're touring?
It plays a massive role. Yeah, because and the music business has changed quite a bit, right? Since streaming has come on board and things. And so much of your way to make a living as an artist right now is to sell merch.
Okay.
If you can go out and sell tickets, obviously that's the goal. But even that, it's tough to do nowadays. And we've heard that from, bands that are way bigger than us. People aren't buying tickets like they used to. And it's just, the whole game has changed. But yeah, as far as income wise, you're working on merch, you're working on trying to sell tickets. You're working on putting new music out and selling that. And eventually that comes to a head, but there's definitely no direct correlation between the size rooms you're playing or the gigs you're on and the amount of money you're making. For example, we got on an opening tour earlier this year for a few dates. It was the biggest opportunity we've had as a band. And they paid us really well, as far as those slots go, but the stakes were higher, and we invested in, a front of house sound man for that run, and photo and video to document that, and all these things. Besides the fact that we drove a ways and things, and so at the end of the day, the money that we made, if any, was going to come from merch, That's what it came down to. You know, the offers that we had took care of what the money we were putting in and that's off the front line, you know, that not involving additional travel costs.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, merch is a big part of it. You know, selling physical copies of music now is the only way to make money off your music because, you know,
people don't really buy digital copies of things.
Yeah, not anymore. Yeah, they used to like 5 years ago, and now that's gone too. So it all plays a part, and that's part of like the business piece where, you know, I'm all of a sudden have been an inventory manager for a retail store. You know, as part of my job, right, to try and make enough money from the merch table this night to put an order in for the next run, so that we can continue to fuel that machine. And even that, you know, we don't sell stuff for near what maybe we could or should, you know, compared to some other bands, because, you know, a lot of times, you know, venues will take a 20% cut, and then you have sales tax in each state. And then you have the cost to make these things. And we aren't a big enough band to order, you know, tens of thousands of dollars in merch. And so there's a bulk thing involved. And so all of a sudden it's like, man, we've sort of viewed the merch machine as hopefully break even advertising is kind of how we've done it. And at some point, you know, you start playing bigger headline shows, then I think you make money off of that. But it's all part of it. And that's part of the learning curve that I didn't have experience in, you know.
Yeah. You sign up for, I'm going to go play music. And now even it's moving more and more. You have to have an active life, if you will, on social media. You have to be engaged. Yeah. You have to have interactions on there to keep people, you know, engaged in what you're doing.
Yeah. That's a massive part of it nowadays. It's such a massive part. And that is a tool that we were slightly unfamiliar with off the bat, and we're still learning. And now it's nice to have some help with that for sure, because we have some people that are intelligent in the ways in which to do that efficiently and to engage. And there's so much that goes into that behind the scenes that I had no idea of until the last month, you know. And but that is, you know, it's the tough thing, right? Because, you know, off the bat, we didn't get into this to try and, you know, do a bunch of stuff online, and yet, you know, if we have these goals and we want to tour nationally, we want to be this band that, you know, can do this for a long time. It's like, that's one of the major tools. And if you want to play the game, you got to play by the rules kind of thing. Doesn't mean we're going to sell ourselves to the internet, but it does mean if we're going to go about this wisely, like, yeah, we have to work on that.
Put out some posts, some reels, talk about where you're going, what you're doing.
Yep.
Show the wood stove.
Yeah. Show a picture of the wood stove and us pumping water from the well, and people can get a kick out of that. Yeah. Yeah, it's all part of it, you know. I think that people get a kick out of, especially like we're talking right now, like people get a kick out of seeing behind the curtain, you know, what's behind the world of wild horses, how does that work, you know? And you know, there's a story there to tell. I mean, I think there really is.
One thing I've always told people, you know, some bands or musicians kind of have a shtick or an act.
Yeah,
Wild Horses kind of is just like you guys. That's Jed LaPlant up on stage.
Yeah.
How Jed LaPlant dresses and how Jed LaPlant acts. And
yeah, I wear the same pair of pants, you know, until they wear out. And so, yeah, that's crawling under the bus one day, and that's going on the stage later that night. And yeah, there's not a lot. I mean, there's really nothing to hide. Not that we would anyways, but that's just, the way it is. It's just kind of it's the whole lifestyle, you know. We haven't exactly invested in a bunch of rhinestone suits yet by any means.
I'd like to see that someday.
Yeah.
That's a ways out.
Yeah, maybe down the line.
Yeah.
We need a bigger write-off, I think.
Yeah. You know, so kind of heading into starting to wrap this up, you know, what's next for you guys? What's your vision? You know, what signs are out ahead?
You know, it's nice just recently coming into some representation. I feel like we can sort of map that out and sort of have goals, whereas before it was literally like see what emails come in so we can try and get anchor dates and try and chase those. But now I think what's next is we want to get out and tour more. We're working on new music, and so that'll come in the form of a record at some point in the near future. And the biggest step, I think, is we're going to try and get on some more support tours. We found in the last year that we've gotten a few of those opportunities. That's been a really good way to build bases where we can then go back to and play our own headline shows. And so the goal is to do more support tours and to get new music out. that's the next phase. And now having help with that, I feel like we can actually focus on that, and know that there's things going on to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, from there, I mean, that's our goal. We want to continue to tour and get out there, and that's next on the horizon.
Are there any upcoming tours or even concerts specifically that you're really excited about?
We've got a few. I mean, we curate this festival in Grand Rapids every year. This festival Rialto, we call it, the first weekend of June, and that one's always a big highlight. That's kind of like all our energy goes into that. It's a hometown show. We're really excited about the lineup every year, and especially this year. I think we sort of overshot, and these bands actually said yes, and now we have a job to do, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So really excited about that. We got a couple other support things coming down the tube later in the year that I don't think are announced yet, so I probably shouldn't say. But
so stay tuned.
So stay tuned. We got a couple tours we're going on this summer. Yeah, I mean, they're all fun. I mean, we played a dive bar outside of Omaha, Nebraska last week, and it was one of the coolest shows we played because the people were great. The food was awesome. And I was looking at the posters on the wall of this place, and it's like, man, some legends have played here, And then, we've, I'm trying to think of another example of it. Like, we got to play these beautiful theaters earlier in this year that were immaculate and gold-plated, everything. And that was really fun, too. I mean, it's all kind of... I mean, we're looking forward to any gig we get to do. So.
Yeah. There are a couple questions I like to wrap up with. What does success look like for you? What on this journey, it's always hard to, get there because things are always going to be changing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're really even talking about here is the journey, where we started and where we're trying to go.
Yeah.
But what would you say that looks like for you?
I think success means us being able to go out and tour in a way that that we could, for one, continue to do that, but we're able to take care of the people that are now involved in this Wild Horses camp.
Mm-hmm.
Now that there are more people involved, and we've certainly given a lot to this the last few years, I think that if we can go out and continue to do what we've been doing in a way that makes it worthwhile and eventually grows into a position of dental insurance for some of us, that's success, I would say.
Yeah.
And beyond that, I mean, we've never had the dream to necessarily be on top 40 radio or play stadiums or anything like that. But I think if we can make a good go at doing this for a long time, that'd be success.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then what legacy are you trying to, pave with your music or your concerts? What do you want people to remember about you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it hits on a little bit more the why. Do we go out and do this? Because again, we could kind of travel around locally and play gigs and stuff. But I think the legacy I think we would seek to leave would be that I think as we go out and meet people, that they would anybody who comes into contact with us or the Greater Wild Horses Network feels loved and taken care of, and has notably a good experience, I would suppose. Because it can be a harsh world anywhere you go, and certainly in the music business. And I think if we can do things a little bit different and leave an impression, I think we always seek to put on a good show, and we always seek to be really honest in our songs. And that's a big part of it. But I think it's the offstage and behind the scenes, when you can shake somebody's hand and say, that they can relate to that song, or they're going through this or that, and this song is one of the things that helped them journey through that. I think that's where the rubber meets the road. Mm-hmm. And I think similarly too, we've gotten into a place where some people look up to us now because we're out there doing it,
Mm-hmm.
And I think the privilege in that is any influence we gain, it means that much more when you shake somebody's hand and ask them about what they're doing, or what their craft is, or what, I think that carries a weight, but it's also an exciting sort of privilege to for whatever reason, we have this perception of people, but that carries more weight. And so I think to be able to just, give back to people and make them feel seen and important and loved, that's really the goal at the end of the day.
You touch on really something there that's really interesting that probably most of us don't encounter, is the fact that you meet people who have listened to you singing, telling a story for hours and hours and hours, and maybe days.
Yeah.
And you come into contact with them, and that's got to be an interesting experience, because it's so far different. You're like, I don't know you, but you know the song. And
really know me.
Yeah, I feel like, and a lot of times when what you're writing is actually fairly vulnerable, you're sharing something about you.
Yeah.
But it's very heavily weighted one way.
It is. It's an interesting dynamic, and it is very personal. I think there's different ways to write songs, but I mean, it's always been for us very personal. It's the most vulnerable thing I think we do. And yeah, it's funny, and I'm glad I have examples of, me looking up to other people in that way, because then I can like understand the perception and the, like, wow, I've spent, years of my life with you, so to speak, but you have no idea who I am. And so, it goes both ways, but it is an interesting dynamic. And I think what I've learned is, number one, I'm pretty humbled by the fact that somebody would spend that much time with something that I've created. But then again, it comes back to, okay, that person, in some form or whatever, looks up to me. And so what is the mark that I'm going to leave on them when they finally get to meet me or whatever, as they interact or see me in person? It's like the old saying goes, don't meet your heroes. I'm certainly not a hero to anybody, but you know what I mean? Like, sometimes that's true. And sometimes people, could come up to me and be excited to meet me and whatnot. And I could not be very happy to see them.
You had spent a few hours under the bus trying to wrench on something. And
yeah. But, rather, like I say, it's like, that's, to me, that moment is an opportunity, and it's, to leave a mark on somebody, and it's either going to be a good or bad one, and I think the more that we can hopefully do that well, then, again, I think it just all around goes better. But yeah, it's an interesting relationship. And I think if we continue to grow, that's something we'll have to grow with, learn to navigate, better. But I think we're pretty decent at knocking down people's, glittery perceptions of our lifestyle when they come up to the merch table to shake my hand and it's full of diesel soot. There's something that it happens very quickly that they realize that we're very normal people.
Yeah. Really, we got our last section here. This is the toolbox takeaway.
All right.
So what's one tool or truth, some sort of takeaway that you want to leave with people who are builders, people who might be looking to build something?
I think the biggest tool is somebody said this about me not too long ago. They said something to the effect of, he has no quit in him. And I thought that was an interesting way to phrase the idea that if you're trying to build something from the ground up, you really have to give it everything that you have, around the clock. I think for me, maybe there's no other way to do it than, make it your lifestyle with a startup like this. That goes without saying that there should be some sort of work-life balance. And I think a person could burn out, and I've done that, and that things have come to a head in a negative way because of that. And thankfully, my wife is very patient and gracious with me. There's been times where it's come to a head that way. But I think the takeaway is just to, being willing to put in whatever work necessary for whatever amount of time to build something is, I think, been to our advantage.
Cool. So you found something that you wanted to do by finding a passion that you're interested in and jumping all in.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're making a living of it. You're surviving.
We're still here.
And you're looking to keep going on this journey. It's really exciting. Where can people follow you? Obviously, we've got Wild Horses. You can find your music on YouTube, streaming services, but where else can people find you?
The best place is probably our website. It's wildhorsesmn.com. That's got the best, most up-to-date information, but we're on, Instagram and Facebook. And, we recently have a TikTok account, for those who get to that part of the internet. But yeah, we try and be as present as we can, on social media. But the website is the best place to like see where we're gigs, where we're touring and whatnot, and see our merch there. Otherwise, yeah, come see us. In person. That's the best way to probably follow along with us, I suppose.
Cool. Well, Jed, I really appreciate you stopping by, sharing your story, and telling us a little bit about where you're headed. And you guys, no matter the detour, the road ahead is yours. So I'm Bridger Hopkins, and this was Bridge Out Ahead.
Thanks again for having me.